The steep mountain path disappeared into the morning fog as Nora Armstrong's covered wagon creaked to a sudden halt, the sickening crack of splintering wood echoing through the Sierra Nevada wilderness. Standing alone in the biting cold of October 1873, she gripped the reins tighter and fought back tears of frustration. Everything she owned sat balanced precariously on this broken wagon, halfway between the life she'd fled and the uncertain future awaiting her in California. "No, no, no," Nora whispered, climbing down from her seat to inspect the damage. The wagon's rear wheel had split clear through, collapsing under the weight of her possessions. At 26, with nothing but determination and the meager inheritance from her late aunt, she'd set out from St. Louis 6 weeks ago, bound for Ventura, California, where her cousin had promised opportunity awaited. Now, alone on this treacherous mountain pass with winter approaching, her journey seemed doomed. A soft whinny from her mare, Penny, was the only response to her predicament. Nora pulled her woolen coat tighter around her shoulders, squinting through the fog for any sign of the trail that would lead her down the western side of the mountains. She was maybe 2 days from civilization if the wheel hadn't broken. Now, she might freeze before anyone came along. "Hello there." "Need some help, madam?" The voice seemed to materialize from the mist itself. Nora spun around, hand instinctively reaching for the small Derringer pistol hidden in her coat pocket. A man on horseback emerged from the fog, leading a second horse behind him. He wore a worn leather duster, a wide-brimmed hat pulled low, and a red bandana around his neck. Tall in the saddle, with broad shoulders and sun-weathered skin, he looked as much a part of these mountains as the pines themselves. "Stay back," Nora called, her voice steadier than her nerves. "I'm armed." The stranger raised his hand slowly, a half-smile crossing his face. "No need for that. Name's Adam Adler. I mean no harm." He nodded toward her wagon. "Looks like you've got yourself quite a problem." "I can manage," Nora replied, though they both knew it was a lie. Adam dismounted with an easy grace that spoke of a lifetime spent in the saddle. "Madam, begging your pardon, but there's a storm coming in. Nobody manages alone on this pass when the weather turns." He kept his distance, respecting her wariness. "I've got tools. I can help fix that wheel." Nora hesitated, studying him more carefully. His blue eyes held no malice, just a quiet confidence and perhaps a touch of amusement at her defiance. His beard was neatly trimmed, and despite the trail dust on his clothes, there was something unexpectedly gentle about him. "What's your business up here?" she asked, still keeping her hand near her hidden pistol. "I trap in these mountains during the season. Got a cabin about 3 miles back." He nodded toward the dark clouds gathering behind them. "Was heading down to Ventura before the snow comes." Ventura. Her destination. Perhaps this wasn't mere chance. "I'm Nora Armstrong," she finally said, relaxing her stance slightly. "And I would appreciate your help, Mr. Adler. I don't have much to pay you with." "Don't need payment," Adam replied, approaching the wagon slowly. "No decent man would leave a lady stranded up here." He knelt to examine the broken wheel, running his hand along the splintered wood. "This is bad, but not impossible. Got a spare?" "No," Nora admitted. "The trader in Fort Bridger said this set would hold." Adam shook his head. "Traders say a lot of things." He stood up, brushing dust from his hands. "I can reinforce this one enough to get you down the mountain, but it won't last beyond that. We need to start now if we're going to beat the weather." Over the next hour, Nora watched as Adam worked methodically on her wheel. He'd brought tools from his saddlebags: a small saw, hammer, nails, and lengths of rope. From a nearby pine, he cut several sturdy branches, shaping them into braces for the damaged wheel. His hands were strong but surprisingly dexterous, working the wood with obvious skill. "You've done this before," Nora observed, handing him nails when requested. "Once or twice," Adam replied with a small smile. "Used to be a wagon maker's apprentice back in Ohio before the war." "The war?" Nora asked quietly. A shadow crossed his face. "Served with the Union, 5th Ohio Cavalry." He didn't elaborate further, focusing on his work with renewed intensity. As Adam worked, Nora made coffee on a small fire, grateful for the warmth against the increasing chill. When she offered him a cup, their fingers brushed briefly. The simple human contact, the first she'd had in weeks of solitary travel, sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. "Thank you," he said, eyes meeting hers for a moment longer than necessary. "It's rare to find good coffee on the trail." "My father insisted his daughters learn to make a proper cup," Nora replied. "Said it was the one skill that would serve us well no matter where life took us." "Smart man," Adam said, sipping appreciatively. "And where exactly is life taking you, Miss Armstrong?" "Mrs.?" Nora corrected automatically, then caught herself. "Well, I was Mrs. Bennett. Now I'm just Miss Armstrong again." She wasn't sure why she was telling him this. Perhaps the isolation of weeks on the trail had left her craving conversation. "I'm headed to Ventura to start fresh. My cousin Emily writes that the town is growing and they need teachers." Adam nodded, returning to his work on the wheel. "You'll find opportunity there. California's changing fast." After a pause, he added, "Sorry about your husband." "Don't be," Nora said, a hint of bitterness creeping into her voice. "William Bennett wasn't worth mourning. Our marriage ended before his life did." Adam glanced up, curiosity evident, but he asked no further questions. His respect for her privacy only made Nora want to explain more. "He gambled away my father's inheritance, then disappeared," she continued, surprising herself with her candor. "They found him dead in an alley behind a St. Louis gambling hall 3 months ago. By then, I'd already decided to head west." "Brave decision, traveling alone," Adam said, securing the makeshift braces to her wheel. "Desperate, more like," Nora admitted. "But I couldn't stay. Too many whispers, too many pitying looks. When my aunt passed and left me a small sum, I saw my chance." The wind picked up suddenly, carrying the first cold drops of rain. Adam worked faster, using rope to bind the wheel's repairs together. "That should hold," he said finally, stepping back to examine his handiwork. "But we need to get moving. This rain's just the start." He was right. The clouds had darkened ominously, and the wind carried the unmistakable smell of snow. Adam helped Nora gather her belongings and secure the wagon, his efficiency born of years in the wilderness. Within minutes, they were moving slowly down the western trail, Adam riding ahead to scout the safest path, occasionally dismounting to clear obstacles or guide Nora through particularly treacherous sections. The trail narrowed as they descended, hugging the mountainside with a sheer drop to their right. Nora's hands trembled slightly on the reins as she navigated the unfamiliar path, constantly afraid the repaired wheel would give way. "Keep to the inside." Adam called back as they approached a hairpin turn. "The edge crumbles easily here." No sooner had he spoken than a gust of wind swept up from the valley, bringing with it a blinding curtain of sleet. Penny startled, jerking sideways. Nora pulled desperately on the reins, but the wagon's momentum carried it dangerously close to the edge. She felt the right wheel slip, stones tumbling into the abyss below. In an instant, Adam was there, leaping from his horse to grab Penny's bridle. With a strength born of desperation, he pulled the horse back toward solid ground, muscles straining against the weight of the wagon. For one terrible moment, Nora thought they would both go over, but then Penny found her footing, and the wagon lurched back to safety. Adam stood there, chest heaving, one hand still on Penny's bridle. Rain plastered his hair to his forehead, and his eyes held an intensity that stole Nora's breath. "Are you all right?" he asked, voice rough with concern. "Yes," she managed, heart pounding. "Thank you." He nodded once, then moved to check the repaired wheel. "Still holding, but we can't risk another close call. There's a sheltered overhang about a mile ahead. We'll make camp there for the night." Camp? Nora felt a flutter of apprehension. She'd spent nights alone in her wagon before, but the thought of sharing a camp with this stranger, this man who had just saved her life, stirred complicated feelings. Adam seemed to read her thoughts. "You'll be safe in your wagon, Miss Armstrong. I give you my word." Somehow, she believed him. The overhang proved to be a natural formation, a rocky shelf jutting out from the mountainside, creating a space large enough for the wagon and horses, sheltered from the worsening weather. Adam worked efficiently, building a small fire near the entrance where smoke could escape without filling their shelter. As darkness fell, the temperature dropped sharply. Nora sat near the fire, wrapped in blankets from her wagon, watching Adam tend to the horses. There was something mesmerizing about his movements, economical yet gentle, especially when he spoke softly to the animals, stroking their necks as he fed them. "You have a way with them," she observed when he finally joined her by the fire. "Animals make sense," he replied, accepting the plate of beans and hardtack she offered. "They don't lie or pretend. You always know where you stand." "Unlike people," Nora added, understanding in her voice. Adam's eyes reflected the firelight as he looked at her. "Some people are worth the trouble of figuring out." The simple statement hung in the air between them, charged with unspoken meaning. Nora looked away first, suddenly aware of the intimacy of their situation, two strangers sharing a fire in the wilderness, with nothing but darkness and storm surrounding them. "How did you end up trapping in these mountains?" she asked, breaking the silence. Adam took his time answering, gazing into the flames. "After the war, I couldn't settle back into town life. Too many ghosts." He poked at the fire with a stick. "Tried my hand at ranching in Nevada for a while, but the land was too hard, the water too scarce. Came over these mountains 5 years ago and never quite left." "Don't you get lonely?" The question slipped out before Nora could stop it. A sad smile crossed his face. "Lonely's different from alone, Miss Armstrong. I've been surrounded by people and felt completely isolated. Out here, at least the solitude is honest." Nora nodded, understanding more than he might have guessed. "After William left, but before he died, I lived in a house full of judgmental relatives who took me in out of Christian charity." The bitterness in her voice was unmistakable. Their pity was worse than any solitude could have been. Outside, the wind howled, driving sleet against their shelter. Adam added more wood to the fire, the crackling flames casting long shadows against the rock walls. "Tell me about Ventura," Nora said, pulling her blanket tighter. "Have you spent much time there?" "Some," Adam replied. "It's growing fast since the railway came through. Good folks, mostly. The land around it is rich citrus groves, cattle ranches. The ocean's right there too, never seen anything like that Pacific blue." "It sounds beautiful," Nora said, trying to picture her new home. "My cousin Emily writes that they're building a proper school. She says they need teachers desperately." "You'll be welcome there," Adam assured her. "Towns like that need women like you, educated, determined." "You make me sound quite formidable," Nora laughed softly. "Aren't you?" Adam's eyes met hers across the fire. "Traveling alone across half a continent takes courage most men I know don't possess." His compliment warmed her more than the fire. For so long, she'd been defined by her failures, a failed marriage, failed expectations. To be seen as brave rather than foolish or desperate was unexpectedly affirming. As the night deepened, They shared stories: Adam of his travels through the territories, Nora of her childhood in Pennsylvania and her teaching years before her ill-fated marriage. She found herself laughing more than she had in years at his dry observations about frontier life and the characters he'd encountered. When they finally retired Adam to his bedroll near the entrance of their shelter, Nora to her wagon, she lay awake, listening to the storm and pondering the strange twist of fate that had brought this solitary mountain man into her path precisely when she needed him most. Morning arrived with unexpected clarity. The storm had passed, leaving the world transformed. Sunlight glistened on ice-coated branches, and the air held the pristine stillness that follows mountain storms. When Nora emerged from her wagon, she found Adam already awake, brewing coffee over a fresh fire. "The trail will be treacherous," he said, handing her a steaming cup. "But the wheel held through the night. If we're careful, we can make it down to the valley by sunset." True to his prediction, the descent proved challenging. The storm had left sections of the trail washed out or covered in ice. Several times, Adam had to lead Penny by the bridle while Nora walked alongside, the two of them guiding the wagon through particularly dangerous passages. During these moments, she caught herself studying his profile, the determined set of his jaw, the watchful intensity in his eyes as he navigated each obstacle. By midday, the trail widened slightly, and the air grew noticeably warmer as they lost elevation. The landscape changed too, pine forests giving way to oak and manzanita. When they stopped to rest the horses by a small stream, Nora noticed Adam wincing as he dismounted. "You're hurt," she said, stepping closer to him. "It's nothing," he dismissed, but she saw how he favored his right side. "Let me see," Nora insisted, her tone leaving no room for argument. Reluctantly, Adam opened his coat, revealing a dark stain on his shirt just below his ribs. "Must have caught it on something when we nearly went over the edge yesterday." Nora retrieved her medical supplies from the wagon and instructed him to sit on a fallen log. With practiced efficiency, the result of tending countless schoolyard injuries, she cleaned and examined the wound. It was a deep gash, probably from a sharp rock or branch, but thankfully not showing signs of infection. "You should have said something last night," she scolded gently, applying a salve of her own making. "Had more important things to worry about," Adam replied, watching her hands work with obvious appreciation for her skill. "Hold still," she murmured, acutely aware of his proximity as she wrapped a clean bandage around his torso. His skin was warm beneath her fingers, and she could feel the steady rhythm of his breathing. When she finally secured the bandage and looked up, their faces were inches apart. For a moment, neither moved. Something unspoken passed between them, recognition, perhaps, of an unexpected connection forming in these strange circumstances. Then Adam cleared his throat and straightened his shirt. "Thank you," he said simply, the words carrying more weight than their simplicity suggested. Nora nodded, suddenly flustered as she packed away her supplies. "We should continue if we want to reach the valley by dark." As they resumed their journey, the conversation flowed more easily between them. Adam pointed out landmarks and shared stories of his journeys through these mountains. He knew every ridge and valley, every stream and game trail with the intimacy of someone who had made this wilderness his home. "How do you keep track of it all?" Nora asked, fascinated by his knowledge. "You learn to read the land," Adam replied. "It speaks if you listen carefully enough. Every rock placement, every bend in a creek tells a story." "Like reading a book," Nora observed. Adam smiled. "I suppose so, though I never was much for book learning. But you speak so well," Nora said, surprised. "I assumed." "My mother was determined her son wouldn't sound like an uneducated farmer," Adam explained. She taught school before she married my father. Every evening, no matter how tired we were from working the fields, she'd read to me Shakespeare, the Bible, anything she could get her hands on. She sounds remarkable. She was, Adam said softly. Died of fever when I was 15. Father followed 3 years later. I'm sorry, Nora said, understanding the weight of such losses. It was a long time ago, Adam replied, though his voice suggested the wounds had never fully healed. What about your parents? Both gone now, Nora said. Father was a banker who believed daughters should be educated same as sons. Mother never quite approved but didn't stand in his way. They died within months of each other 5 years ago before they could see what a mess I'd made of their expectations. Marrying the wrong man doesn't make you a failure, Miss Armstrong, Adam said quietly. Doesn't it? Nora challenged. I was educated, independent. I should have known better than to fall for William's charm. Love makes fools of the wisest among us, Adam replied, with enough weight behind the words to suggest personal experience. Nora wanted to ask more but sensed his reluctance to elaborate. Instead, they rode in companionable silence as the trail wound lower into the foothills. By late afternoon, they rounded a bend, and suddenly the landscape opened before them. Below, a vast valley stretched toward the distant shimmer of the Pacific Ocean, green and gold in the afternoon light. Even from this distance, Nora could make out the patchwork of farms and ranches, the thin lines of roads connecting scattered settlements. There it is, Adam said, reining in beside her wagon. Ventura County, your new beginning. Something in his tone made Nora turn to study his face. For the first time, she saw uncertainty there, perhaps even regret. How far to the town itself? She asked. Another day's journey, Adam replied. But there's a way station at the base of the foothills. We can reach it by nightfall, proper beds, hot food. The prospect of civilization after weeks on the trail should have delighted her, but Nora found herself strangely reluctant to end this journey. These 2 days with Adam had awakened something she thought long buried, a capacity for trust, for connection. As if reading her thoughts, Adam added, The wheels held better than I expected, but it won't make it much further. At the station, you can arrange for proper repairs before continuing to Ventura. And you? Nora asked, surprised by how much his answer mattered. Adam hesitated. I have business in town, some supplies to pick up, furs to sell. It wasn't quite an answer, but it was enough for now. They continued their descent, the trail gradually widening into a proper road. By dusk, they arrived at Jensen's Way Station, a cluster of sturdy buildings surrounding a central courtyard, where several wagons and horses were already gathered. The sudden transition from wilderness solitude to the bustle of the station was jarring. Men called greetings to Adam as they entered the yard, suggesting he was well known here despite his solitary nature. A round-faced woman emerged from the main building, hands on her hips. Adam Adler, thought you might have frozen to death up in those mountains, she exclaimed, then noticed Nora. And who's this you've brought with you? Mrs. Jensen, this is Miss Nora Armstrong, Adam introduced them. Her wagon broke down on the pass. She's headed to Ventura to take up teaching. Mrs. Jensen's face softened. Well, you're welcome here, Miss Armstrong. We've got a room ready and stew on the stove. Your timing's good. My husband can look at that wagon first thing tomorrow. True to her word, Mrs. Jensen provided a small but clean room, and the stew was the most delicious meal Nora had eaten in weeks. The way station's common room was filled with travelers and locals, their conversations a constant hum around the wooden tables. Nora found herself watching Adam as he spoke with several men trappers. By the look of them, his usual reserve softening slightly among people he clearly knew well. Later, as the evening wound down, Adam joined her at her table, bringing 2 cups of coffee. "Mrs. Jensen says her husband can repair your wheel properly, but it will take a day or 2, he said, sliding 1 cup toward her. "I'm in no rush," Nora replied, surprised to find it was true. After weeks of driving toward her destination, these unexpected days of delay felt like a gift rather than an inconvenience. Adam seemed pleased by her response. "In that case, perhaps you'd allow me to show you something tomorrow. There's a place nearby. It's special to me." The invitation hung between them, laden with possibilities neither was ready to name. Nora found herself nodding, curiosity and something deeper compelling her acceptance. "I'd like that," she said simply. Morning brought clear skies and a gentle warmth unusual for late October. After breakfast, Nora changed into her least travel-worn dress, a simple blue cotton that brought out the color of her eyes, according to her cousin Emily. She pinned her chestnut hair more carefully than usual, then chided herself for such vanity. This was merely a friendly outing with a man who had helped her in a time of need. Nothing more. Yet when she stepped into the courtyard and saw Adam waiting with 2 saddled horses, her pulse quickened traitorously. He'd clearly made efforts with his own appearance. His beard was freshly trimmed, his shirt clean, and his usual weathered duster replaced by a simpler leather vest. "Good morning," he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice that she found endearing. "I thought riding would be easier than taking the wagon." "It's perfect," Nora assured him, accepting his help onto the smaller of the 2 horses, a gentle bay mare. They rode west from the station, following a narrow trail that wound through rolling hills covered in golden grass. Adam pointed out landmarks and told stories of the area's history, the Spanish missions, the rancho days, the changes that came with American statehood. Nora found herself completely engaged, asking questions that revealed her natural curiosity about her new home. After an hour's ride, they crested a hill and Adam drew his horse to a stop. "There," he said, pointing ahead. Nora gasped softly. Before them, a small valley opened up, its floor carpeted with wildflowers that had somehow survived into autumn. A clear stream cut through the center, and ancient oak trees provided dappled shade along its banks. Beyond the valley, the land stretched toward the Pacific, the ocean visible as a distant blue shimmer. "It's beautiful," Nora breathed. "The locals call it El Val de Flores, the Valley of Flowers," Adam explained as they dismounted. "It blooms year-round because of the springs that feed the stream. Even in winter, something's always growing here." He led her down a narrow path into the valley, the horses trailing behind them. The air was sweet with the scent of sage and flowers, and birds called from the oaks. Near the stream, Adam spread a blanket he'd brought in his saddlebags and unpacked a simple picnic: bread, cheese, dried fruit, and a bottle of wine. "Mrs. Jensen's contribution," he explained, holding up the wine. "She seemed quite determined we should have it." Nora laughed, settling onto the blanket. "She asked me several pointed questions about my friendship with you this morning." "Did she now?" Adam looked both embarrassed and amused. "Mrs. Jensen fancies herself a matchmaker. She's been trying to civilize me for years." "Is that what I'm doing?" Nora asked lightly, though her heart beat faster. "Civilizing the mountain man." Adam's eyes met hers, suddenly serious. "If anyone could, it might be you." The admission hung in the air between them, changing everything and nothing at once. Nora accepted a glass of wine, using the moment to collect her thoughts. This man was still largely a stranger, yet in 2 days he'd shown her more genuine care and respect than William had in years of marriage. "Tell me about her," Nora said softly. "The woman who made you retreat to the mountains." Adam looked startled, then thoughtful. "How did you know?" the way you spoke about love making fools of the wisest," Nora explained. It sounded like experience talking. Adam was quiet for a long moment, gazing at the distant ocean. "Her name was Sarah," he finally said. "We were to be married when I returned from the war. I came home to find she'd wed a man who'd paid his way out of service, a merchant's son with prospects better than a farmer-turned-soldier could offer." "I'm sorry," Nora said, understanding the betrayal he must have felt. "It was for the best," Adam replied, though old pain lingered in his voice. "I wasn't the same man who left. The things I'd seen, done. I wasn't fit for the life we'd planned. So you chose solitude instead." "It seemed simpler," Adam admitted. "Safer." "And now?" Nora asked, her question weighted with unspoken meaning. Adam's gaze returned to her, searching her face. "Now I'm not so sure." The honesty of his answer touched her deeply. Here was a man who had known loss and betrayal, who had chosen isolation rather than risk further pain, yet something about their chance meeting had caused him to question that choice. The realization was both thrilling and terrifying. They ate their simple meal, the conversation shifting to lighter topics: Nora's plans for teaching, Adam's knowledge of the local fauna and flora. He showed her which plants were medicinal, which berries were safe to eat. His expertise reminded her that this seemingly simple man had depths of knowledge that few could match. After they'd eaten, they walked along the stream, eventually stopping beneath the shade of an enormous oak tree. Its massive trunk spoke of centuries of growth, its branches spreading like protective arms over the valley floor. "This is my favorite place in all of California," Adam said, leaning against the trunk. "When the world gets too complicated, I come here to remember what matters." "And what is that?" Nora asked, standing beside him, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Life," Adam replied simply. "Growth, the way things endure." He looked down at her, his expression open and vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. "The courage to begin again." The words resonated in Nora's heart, echoing her own journey west. Impulsively, she reached out, placing her hand on his arm. "Thank you for bringing me here, for sharing this with me." Adam covered her hand with his own, rough calluses against her softer skin. "Thank you for making me want to." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Nora was acutely aware of their solitude, of the beauty surrounding them, of the unexpected connection that had formed in the space of just a few days. When Adam finally leaned down, his intention clear in his eyes, she didn't pull away. His lips met hers gently, a question more than a demand. Nora answered by stepping closer, her hand moving from his arm to his chest, feeling his heartbeat quicken beneath her palm. The kiss deepened, years of loneliness dissolving in the simple, profound connection of two people who had found each other against all odds. When they finally parted, Adam kept her close, his forehead resting against hers. "I didn't plan this," he whispered. "Nor did I," Nora replied, surprised by the steadiness of her voice despite her racing pulse. "But I'm not sorry. Neither am I." His smile was like sunrise after the longest night. They spent the remainder of the afternoon in that peaceful valley, talking, laughing, occasionally falling into comfortable silence. As the sun began its descent toward the Pacific, casting long shadows across the flower-strewn grass, they reluctantly gathered their things and mounted their horses for the return journey. The ride back to the way station was quiet, both lost in thoughts about what had transpired and what might come next. As they approached the station, the spell of their private idyll began to fade, reality intruding with its complexities and uncertainties. In the courtyard, Mr. Jensen approached them, wiping grease from his hands on a rag. "Miss Armstrong, got your wheel fixed up good as new." "Better," Actually, that old one was ready to give out long before it did. "Thank you," Nora said, dismounting with Adam's assistance, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "You're all set to head out tomorrow if you're keen," Mr. Jensen continued, oblivious to the charged moment between them. "Tomorrow." The word fell between them like a stone. Nora looked at Adam, searching his face for clues to his thoughts. "Actually," Adam said slowly, "I was thinking of accompanying Miss Armstrong to Ventura if she'd allow it. That wheel may be new, but the trail can be treacherous for someone traveling alone." "Of course," Mr. Jensen nodded. "Always safer with company." He retreated to his workshop, leaving them standing in the gathering twilight. "You don't need to escort me," Nora said softly, though her heart leapt at his offer. "I've troubled you enough." "It's no trouble," Adam replied, his eyes never leaving hers. "Unless you'd prefer to continue alone." "No," Nora admitted, honesty winning out over pride. "I wouldn't." That evening they sat together on the way station's porch, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. The air between them had changed, charged with awareness, possibility, and unspoken questions about the future. "Tell me about your cabin," Nora asked, breaking a comfortable silence. "What's it like living in the mountains?" Adam described his simple home, a sturdy log structure nestled in a protected valley, with a stream nearby and game plentiful in the surrounding forest. As he spoke, Nora could picture it clearly, the solitary but not unhappy life he'd built for himself. "It sounds peaceful," she observed. "It is," Adam agreed, "but lately I've been thinking it's perhaps too peaceful, too empty." The implication hung in the air between them, neither quite ready to address it directly. Instead, Nora shared more about her plans for Ventura, the teaching position waiting for her, her hopes of eventually opening her own school. "You'll be good at it," Adam said with certainty. "Those children will be fortunate to have you." "If they'll have me," Nora replied, a hint of anxiety creeping into her voice. "I've been dreaming of this fresh start for so long, but now that it's almost here." "You'll find your place," Adam assured her. "Ventura's growing fast, but it still has that sense of community. People look out for each other there." "Will you be one of those people?" Nora asked, the question slipping out before she could reconsider. Adam turned to her, his expression serious in the lantern light. "I'd like to be," he said softly, "if you'd want that." It wasn't quite a declaration, but it was an opening, and acknowledgement that whatever had sparked between them deserved a chance to grow. Nora reached across the space between their chairs, her hand finding his. "I would," she said simply. Morning brought preparations for the final leg of their journey. Nora's wagon, now sporting a sturdy new wheel, was loaded and ready by mid-morning. Adam had business to conclude with several of the trappers staying at the way station, and Nora found herself watching him as he negotiated the sale of his furs. There was a quiet competence to him that she found increasingly attractive, a man who knew his worth and his work without need for boasting. Mrs. Jensen approached, following Nora's gaze. "He's a good man," she said without preamble. "Keeps to himself mostly, but never turns away someone in need." "How long have you known him?" Nora asked, curious about this side of Adam's life. "Going on 5 years now," Mrs. Jensen replied. "Comes through every few months with his furs, heading to Ventura to sell what he doesn't trade here. Always polite, always fair in his dealings." She gave Nora a meaningful look. "Never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you, though." Nora felt heat rise to her cheeks, but couldn't deny the pleasure the words gave her. "We've only just met." "Some things don't need time," Mrs. Jensen said with the confidence of long experience. "My husband proposed 3 days after we met. Been together 32 years now." Before Nora could respond, Adam approached, his business concluded. "Ready?" he asked, something soft in his expression as he looked at her. They set out under clear skies, Adam riding alongside Nora's wagon as the road wound through the foothills toward the coastal plain. The land grew increasingly cultivated as they traveled, orchards and farms replacing the wild countryside, signs of civilization becoming more frequent. "Your cousin," Adam said as they passed a particularly prosperous-looking citrus grove. "What's she like?" "Emily." "She's wonderful," Nora replied, smiling at the thought of her favorite relative. "Always had more spirit than was considered proper. She came west with her husband 5 years ago. He's the town doctor in Ventura now. And she approves of your plan to teach. It was her idea," Nora explained. "She's been writing to me about the need for teachers ever since she knew my marriage had ended. Said Ventura was the perfect place for a fresh start." "She sounds wise," Adam observed. "She is," Nora agreed, "though she'll likely have 100 questions about you." Adam raised an eyebrow. "About me? A mysterious mountain man who rescued me on the pass? Of course," Nora laughed. "Emily loves nothing better than a good story." "And what will you tell her?" Adam's tone was light, but the question held weight. Nora considered for a moment. "The truth. That you helped me when I needed it most, and that I've never met anyone quite like you." The simple honesty seemed to please him. They continued their journey, the conversation flowing easily between them. By late afternoon, they crested a rise, and suddenly the town of Ventura lay before them, a collection of buildings nestled between rolling hills and the vast blue expanse of the Pacific Ocean. "There it is," Adam said, reining in his horse beside her wagon. "Your new home." Nora felt a complex mixture of emotions: excitement, apprehension, and a strange reluctance now that her long journey was actually ending. She looked at Adam, finding a similar complexity in his expression. "Will you stay in town a while?" she asked, the question containing so many others she wasn't ready to voice. "I have some business that could keep me here a few days," Adam replied carefully. "If there's reason to stay longer." The implication was clear: he was giving her space, allowing her to settle into her new life without pressure, but making it equally clear that he was open to more if she wished it. They entered town as the sun was setting, the main street busy with the day's final activities. Ventura was larger than Nora had expected. Proper buildings lined the streets, including a hotel, several stores, a schoolhouse, and what appeared to be newly constructed government offices. The influence of both Spanish and American architecture was evident, creating a unique character unlike any place Nora had lived before. Following Emily's directions, they made their way to a handsome 2-story house on a quiet street lined with pepper trees. Before they could even stop the wagon, the front door flew open, and a woman with Nora's same chestnut hair came hurrying down the path. "Nora, you're finally here," Emily exclaimed, embracing her cousin tightly. She pulled back, examining Nora's face. "The journey hasn't killed you, that's a good sign." Her gaze shifted to Adam, curiosity evident. "And who is this?" "Emily, this is Adam Adler," Nora introduced them. "My wagon wheel broke on the mountain pass. If not for Mr. Adler, I might still be stranded there." "Or worse," Adam added quietly. Emily's expression softened. "Then we owe you our thanks, Mr. Adler. Please, both of you come inside. Robert will be home from his round shortly, and dinner is almost ready." The welcome was warm, the house comfortable and inviting. Dr. Robert Anderson proved to be as kind as Emily had described in her letters, a thoughtful man with intelligent eyes, and a genuine interest in their journey. Throughout dinner, Nora found herself frequently glancing at Adam, observing how he navigated this more refined setting. Though quieter than usual, he held his own, his natural dignity and intelligence evident despite his frontier background. After the meal, When Robert took Adam to his study to show him maps of the region, Emily cornered Nora in the kitchen. "Well," she demanded without preamble. "There's more to this story than a broken wagon wheel, isn't there?" Nora felt herself blushing. "It's not what you're thinking, isn't it?" Emily's knowing smile suggested otherwise. "The way you look at each other when you think no one notices." "It's complicated," Nora admitted. "We've only known each other a few days." "Sometimes a few days is enough," Emily said, unconsciously echoing Mrs. Jensen's words. "Robert and I knew within a week. He lives in the mountains, Em. He's a trapper, a solitary man. And yet he's here in town, looking at you like you've hung the moon," Emily observed. "People can change, Nora. Find new paths." Before Nora could respond, the men rejoined them and the conversation shifted to Nora's plans. Emily had already arranged an interview with the school board for the following day, and the news that a properly educated teacher had arrived was apparently causing quite a stir in town. As the evening grew late, Adam rose to take his leave. "I've taken a room at the hotel," he explained. "I should let you both catch up." Emily insisted he join them for dinner the following evening, an invitation Adam accepted with a grateful nod. At the door, he and Nora found themselves momentarily alone as Emily retreated tactfully to the kitchen. "Thank you," Nora said softly, "for everything." "Will you be all right?" Adam asked, his concern genuine. "Yes," Nora assured him, though part of her wished he didn't have to leave. "Emily and Robert are wonderful, and knowing you're nearby." Adam took her hand, his thumb gently stroking her palm. "I'm not going anywhere, not yet." The promise in those words carried her through the night and into the next day. Emily took Nora on a tour of Ventura, introducing her to shopkeepers and prominent citizens. Everywhere they went, Nora was welcomed warmly, the town's need for a qualified teacher evident in people's enthusiastic responses. The interview with the school board that afternoon went better than Nora could have hoped. The three men comprising the board were clearly impressed by her credentials and experience, and the position was offered on the spot. She would begin teaching the following Monday, with the weekend to prepare and settle in. "I told you they'd snatch you up immediately," Emily said as they walked home from the meeting. "The current teacher is the Reverend's wife, and she's expecting their third child. She's been praying for a replacement for months." Nora felt a surge of excitement and purpose. After years of uncertainty, she finally had a clear path forward, meaningful work in a community that seemed eager to embrace her. The only uncertainty now was Adam, what place, if any, he might have in this new life she was building. That evening, when he arrived for dinner, Nora was struck again by how easily he adapted to different circumstances. He'd clearly made efforts with his appearance. His clothes were town-appropriate, his manner respectful but not deferential. During the meal, he spoke of his knowledge of the region's history and natural resources in a way that thoroughly impressed Robert. "You know," Robert said thoughtfully, "the town council's been talking about hiring someone to survey the back country, document the waterways, potential dangers, resources. Given your experience, you might be the perfect man for such work." Adam looked surprised. "I've never done anything so official. But you know those mountains better than anyone," Robert pressed. "And you're clearly educated enough to document what you observe. It would mean a base in town, of course, with regular expeditions into the mountains." The possibility hung in the air, a potential bridge between Adam's solitary existence and a more connected life in Ventura. Nora held her breath, watching his reaction carefully. "It's something to consider," Adam said finally, his eyes finding Nora's across the table. Later, after Emily and Robert had tactfully retired early, Nora and Adam sat on the front porch, the night air filled with the scent of nearby orange groves and the distant sound of the ocean. "Did you know Robert would make that offer?" Adam asked. "No," Nora replied honestly. "But it seems perfect, doesn't it? You could still have your mountains, but also—" "Also what?" Adam prompted when she hesitated. "Connections," Nora said carefully. "A place in the community." "With you?" The directness of his question took her breath away. "If that's what you want," she answered, her heart pounding. Adam reached for her hand, his grip warm and certain. "I came down that mountain to guide you to safety, Nora. I stayed because I found something I wasn't looking for, something I thought I'd never find again." "What's that?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Hope," he said simply. "A reason to stop running from life." Under the pepper trees, with the sound of the ocean in the distance, Adam kissed her, not the tentative kiss of their day in the valley, but a kiss filled with certainty and promise. Nora responded in kind, all her doubts momentarily silenced by the rightness of being in his arms. When they finally parted, Adam kept her close. "I know it's fast," he said softly. "I know we've only just begun to know each other. But I feel like I've been waiting my whole life to find you without even knowing what I was missing." "I feel it too," Nora admitted. "After William, I never thought I'd trust anyone again. But with you, it's different. It's real in a way nothing else has ever been. So we give this a chance?" Adam asked, the vulnerability in his question touching her deeply. "Yes," Nora replied without hesitation. "We give it every chance." The following weeks unfolded with a happiness Nora had scarcely dared to hope for. She began teaching at the town school, quickly winning the respect of both students and parents with her combination of firm discipline and genuine care. The work was challenging but deeply satisfying, exactly the purpose she had sought in coming west. Meanwhile, Adam had accepted Robert's proposal, taking temporary lodgings at the hotel while beginning his survey work. The town council, impressed by his knowledge and capabilities, had formalized the arrangement with a proper contract. 3 weeks after their arrival in Ventura, he purchased a small piece of land on the outskirts of town, close enough for easy access, but with enough space and privacy to satisfy his independent nature. They courted properly, though their unusual beginning had already created a deeper connection than most new couples experienced. Adam joined the Anderson family for Sunday dinners, accompanied Nora to church and town events, and gradually integrated himself into community life in a way he never had before. His natural reserve remained, but people respected him for his knowledge and integrity. On weekends, they often rode together, Adam showing Nora the hidden beauties of her new home, secluded beaches, hidden valleys, ancient oak groves. During these private excursions, they learned each other's histories more fully, Adam speaking of the horrors he had witnessed during the war, Nora confessing the full extent of William's betrayals and abuse. "He made me doubt everything about myself," she admitted during one such ride as they sat together on a bluff overlooking the Pacific. "My judgment, my worth, even my sanity at times." "He was wrong," Adam said with quiet fury, "about all of it." "I know that now," Nora replied, leaning against his shoulder, "but it took a long time to believe it again." Adam's arm tightened around her. "I would never hurt you that way." "I know," Nora said simply, and she did. Despite the briefness of their acquaintance, she trusted Adam with a certainty that defied explanation. As autumn deepened into winter mild by the standards Nora was accustomed to, but bringing welcome rains to the coastal region, Adam's small house took shape. He built much of it himself, with help from several men in town who had come to respect his quiet competence. It was a simple structure, but solidly crafted, with large windows facing the mountains he loved. "What do you think?" he asked Nora one December afternoon as they stood in what would become the main room, sunlight streaming through newly installed windows. Nora turned slowly, taking in the craftsmanship, the careful attention to detail. "It's beautiful," she said honestly. "It suits you. But would it suit you?" Adam asked, his voice carefully neutral. Nora's heart quickened. "What are you asking, Adam?" He took her hands in his expression more serious than she'd ever seen it. "I'm asking if you could be happy in a house like this with a man like me. I'm asking if you might consider becoming my wife." Though she had begun to hope for this, the reality of his proposal still took her breath away. "Are you certain?" she asked. "It hasn't even been 3 months." "I've never been more certain of anything," Adam replied. "I love you, Nora. I think I began falling in love with you the moment I saw you on that mountain pass, looking so determined despite your predicament." Nora laughed softly at the memory, tears of joy gathering in her eyes. "I thought you were either my salvation or my doom. And now?" Adam asked, his hands tightening gently around hers. "Now I know you're both," Nora said, stepping closer to him. "You saved me in more ways than just fixing that wheel, and you've utterly ruined me for any life that doesn't include you. Is that a yes?" Adam's smile was beginning to break through his serious expression. "Yes," Nora confirmed, laughing through her tears. "Yes, I will marry you, Adam Adler." He lifted her off her feet in his enthusiasm, spinning her around in the sunlit room that would become their home. When he set her down, his kiss was tender yet passionate, a promise of the life they would build together. They were married in the small church in Ventura on a clear January morning in 1874. Emily had insisted on a proper wedding, and the entire town seemed to turn out for the occasion. Nora wore a simple but elegant white dress that Emily had helped her make, and Adam looked transformed in his new suit. His usual weathered appearance softened for this special day. The Reverend spoke of journeys and providence, of 2 paths converging against all odds. As Nora stood beside Adam, exchanging vows before their new community, she marveled at the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. If her wheel hadn't broken on that mountain pass, if the storm hadn't forced them to seek shelter together, if Adam hadn't been the kind of man who would stop to help a stranger in need, none of this would have happened. The celebration afterward was joyful, the town hall decorated with winter greenery and Emily's precious hothouse flowers. As dusk fell, Adam led Nora away from the festivities to the small house that was now their home. He carried her across the threshold in the traditional manner, both of them laughing at the formality of it. Inside, a fire was already burning in the hearth Robert's doing, Nora suspected, and the simple rooms were transformed by the golden light. Adam set her down gently, suddenly seeming almost shy despite the weeks of courtship. "Welcome home, Mrs. Adler," he said softly. The name was still new, still a wonder to hear. Nora reached up to touch his face, the face that had become as dear to her as her own. "Thank you for finding me on that mountain. Thank you for letting me guide you down," Adam replied, drawing her close, "and for every day since." In the firelight, they began their married life together, 2 souls who had found each other against all odds, brought together by a broken wheel and the courage to begin again. Spring came early to Ventura that year, bringing with it a profusion of wildflowers that reminded Nora of the hidden valley where she and Adam had first acknowledged their feelings. Their life together had settled into a pleasant rhythm, Nora teaching during the week, Adam alternating between his survey expeditions and working on their home and land. They planted an orchard of young citrus trees, established a vegetable garden, and added a small stable for their horses. On weekends, they often rode into the mountains together, Adam sharing his knowledge of the wilderness, Nora bringing picnics and books to read aloud in favorite spots. The community had embraced them fully. Adam's initial reserve had given way to a quiet but genuine involvement in town affairs. His surveys had proven invaluable to local ranchers and the town council alike, earning him respect beyond what his taciturn nature might otherwise have invited. Nora, meanwhile, had transformed the small schoolhouse into a place of genuine learning, introducing new books and methods that impressed even the more traditional families. In late April, as they sat on their porch watching the sun set behind the mountains, Nora took Adam's hand and placed it gently over her stomach. "I have news," she said, her voice soft with wonder. Adam's expression shifted from confusion to dawning realization. "Are you certain, Doctor?" "Robert confirmed it today," Nora nodded, her eyes shining. "By Christmas, we'll be 3 instead of 2. The joy that transformed Adam's face was unlike anything Nora had ever seen, pure, unguarded happiness that made him look younger than his 34 years. He gathered her carefully into his arms, pressing his forehead to hers. "I never thought I'd have this," he whispered. "A wife, a child, a real home. After the war, I was so certain I'd live and die alone in those mountains." "And now?" Nora asked, cradling his face in her hands. "Now I can't imagine any life but this one," Adam replied. "With you, with our child, with everything we're building together." The months that followed were filled with preparations and anticipation. Adam added a room to their home for the expected child, working with a tenderness that moved Nora deeply. She continued teaching until late in her pregnancy, the children and parents of Ventura protective and supportive of their beloved teacher. On a cold, clear night in December, with a full moon illuminating the mountains Adam loved so much, their son was born. Robert attended the birth, with Emily providing support as Nora labored through the night. When the first cry rang out, Adam, who had been pacing anxiously in the next room, rushed in at Robert's call. "You have a son," Robert announced, placing the swaddled infant in Nora's arms. Adam knelt beside the bed, his expression a mixture of awe and overwhelming love as he gazed at his wife and child. "He's perfect," he whispered, gently touching the baby's tiny hand. "James," Nora said softly. "James William Adler." They had agreed on the first name after Adam's father, but she had kept the middle name a surprise. Adam looked at her questioningly. "William, for new beginnings," Nora explained. "To remember that sometimes what seems like an ending leads to something more beautiful than we could have imagined." Adam understood immediately, his eyes filling with tears as he pressed a kiss to her forehead. "James William Adler," he repeated. "Welcome to the world, son." Life with a newborn brought new challenges and deeper joys than either had anticipated. Adam proved to be a natural father, his usual competence extending to the care of their son. He adjusted his work schedule to be home more, taking little James with him on shorter excursions as soon as the boy was old enough. As James grew from infant to toddler, their family life blossomed. Nora returned to teaching part-time, bringing James with her when appropriate. The schoolchildren adored little Mr. Adler, as they called him, and he thrived in the lively environment. On the 3rd anniversary of their meeting that fateful day on the mountain pass, when Nora's wheel had broken, Adam surprised her with a special gift. He led her outside at sunset to show her a new wagon he had built himself, smaller than her original one but crafted with extraordinary care. "For family adventures," he explained as she admired his handiwork. "I thought when James is a bit older, we might take longer journeys together, perhaps even show him the pass where his parents' story began." Nora ran her hand along the smooth wood, noting the special touches, the comfortable seats, the clever storage compartments, the sturdy wheels built to last. "It's beautiful," she said. "Though I hope these wheels hold better than my last one." Adam laughed, pulling her close. "I built them myself. They'll hold through anything." "Then they're like us," Nora replied, standing on tiptoe to kiss him. "Built to last through whatever comes," and last they did. Through the years that followed the birth of their daughter Catherine, 2 years later, the expansion of the school with Nora as its headmistress, Adam's appointment as the county's official surveyor, their love only deepened. The broken wheel that had seemed a disaster became, in their family lore, the miracle that had brought them together. On crisp autumn evenings, they would often sit on their porch, watching their children play in the yard, the mountains silhouetted against the sunset sky. In those quiet moments, Nora would sometimes catch Adam watching her with the same wonder that had been in his eyes that first day, when he had fixed her wagon wheel and guided her down from the mountains into a life neither of them could have imagined. "Do you ever wonder," she asked him once, as they watched 10-year-old James teaching little Catherine to ride her pony, "what would have happened if my wheel hadn't broken that day? If we had passed each other on the trail without stopping?" Adam considered the question, his arm tightening around her shoulders. "I believe we would have found each other somehow," he said finally. "Some connections are meant to be, no matter what obstacles stand in their way." Nora rested her head against his shoulder, content in the certainty of his love and the life they had built together. "I think you're right," she said softly. "Some journeys, no matter how difficult, lead exactly where we're meant to go." As the years passed and their children grew, Nora and Adam's story became something of a legend in Ventura, the schoolteacher and the mountain man, brought together by a broken wagon wheel and the courage to trust again. Their home remained a haven for family and friends, their marriage a testament to the unexpected gifts that can arise from life's challenges. And sometimes, on clear days, they would ride together up into the mountains, to the spot where they had first met. There, surrounded by the wilderness that had once been Adam's only home, they would remember the beginning of their journey and give thanks for the broken wheel that had changed everything.